My beef is with the system and the people propping up the system. You know, uh, that's who I have beef with. The people being victim of the system is not the people I have beef with. The people not being given much alternative to the system is not who I have beef with. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome if you're new. Welcome back if you're revenant. Please consider subscribing if you like everything and anything about fashion, critical thinking, and yapping. I know it's been a long time. It's been about 2 months since I last posted, but life was doing life and I just could not really keep up with all my platforms, actually the ones that I really like, which are Instagram, Substack, and YouTube. So I'm very active on Instagram because usually I'm just reposting things and posting some outfit pics and in between political things. um, but like I try my best to also be active on my other platforms, but unfortunately when you also have a job and you have life, marrying everything can be a bit hard, so please bear with me. And I think I already kind of warned you that I try my best to post on here, but sometimes I might be absent. Welcome to all the new people that kind of discovered me through my fashion literacy video. It's kind of insane to me to see like how the algorithm works with YouTube, because that fashion literacy video was posted a year ago now, I think, and it's the video that has been doing the best on my channel. And it's just kind of, interesting that it's being taken back up by the algorithm and being pushed, and a lot of you have actually found me through this video, so welcome. I do a lot of videos on fashion in a very critical Marxist lens, and I like to take like whatever topic that really speaks my mind, and just share my opinion. And talking about topics, today's topic is on fast fashion being promoted by influencers as like nothing was wrong, and how I'm observing some influencers who used to be like die hard sustainable influencers now tossing their principles in order to promote fast fashion brands such as H&M, Mango, Zara, and all of that. And also like observing that with the societal atmosphere that we all witnessing at the moment, which is the heightened phase of capitalism, which translates to fascism, and seeing like all those mega corporations being pushed, to the forefront, to for people to consume, when those companies, those corporation just don't care. It's just that we are at a point where we need they need to actually hoard as much money as they can, and it's just a very fascinating thing to witness, and I just wanted to give my 2 cents on the matter because I've been trying to make sense of it, and I can't really make much sense of this, but trying to see it through like a more critical, and again, I view everything through a Marxist lens in order to understand why we are seeing people, influencers in general, tossing the very little principles that they had to begin with. Let's start there. And just trying to hop on the fascist bandwagon, in a way, because they're trying to protect their assets. They're trying to believe that if they join that capitalistic side, they might be saved from the decaying empire. I don't know. It's a very interesting topic. I would also like to have like your opinions down in the comments below. But yeah, so we're going to talk about, influencers promoting fast fashion brand like there's no tomorrow, as we are all witnessing and going through a decaying fascistic empire. For this first chapter, I think I just want to talk about my observation of witnessing all those. It was mostly the H&M ads. Disclaimer, I'm not gonna name names in general, because it's more like a broad observation that I have made, and I just want to talk about it like broadly because it's a broad thing, more so than pointing fingers at like influences and all of that. Because first of all, I can't be bothered to go back and look at which influencers did or said what. But I think it's just, to see the perspective of the whole issue. And at first it was the whole H&M studio that was being promoted around. And what was actually funny is that I've seen like some influencers trying to justify promoting H&M Studio because they were like, oh, but it's H&M Studio, it's better quality, it's better materials and fabrics, so it's not like the casual H&M. And I remember when I was hearing that, I was a little bit like confused because I'm just like, okay, so maybe the whole thing is better material, but when we're talking about sustainability, it's not just the material that we're talking about. It is also like the workforce. Like, is the workforce being paid fairly? Can the workforce actually afford to also buy any of these items, the items they made with their very hands? Do we really have a proper disclosure from H&M about that? Because last time I checked, especially the green collection, I don't know, how is it called, like H&M, they have a collection where it's supposed to be like more sustainable. Last time I checked, they did not have much information. I also have like a video about like the whole thing about ethical and sustainability that I posted slightly over a year ago, I think, and I tried to explain what is the difference between sustainable and ethical, and why it is actually very important to know the difference, and not to be funneled in that greenwashing propaganda. Because what is happening mostly is the whole greenwashing. Those massive brands, massive corporations are greenwashing us and have been greenwashing us for the longest time. Because the thing is, in a society where you want to be more sustainable, sustainability means also that you have to slow down with the production. And a corporation and a brand like H&M or Mango, or Zara, whose entire production system is to overproduce, to buy in bulk, and then to sell that because it's cheaper to buy in bulk than it is cheaper to buy in small quantities, is not compatible with sustainability. It just is not. And if they were really willing to be sustainable, they would actually slow down their production, and they would actually make sure that they produce less but they produce better. But it's not in their radar to do something like that. So it's the very first kind of red flag when you see those brands trying to be like sustainable, but they have like a sustainable line, but on the side they still have their regular line. And that's something that the moment where I started to dig a little bit deeper on the whole like sustainable fast fashion realm, that's when I kind of understood that something was a bit wrong. Because what do you mean that you have like a sustainable line, where there's a line where you get to produce more ethically, more sustainably, but on the side you keep doing the same production, which is actually the first problem. And the moment I started doing a bit more digging, the moment I kind of realized that, first of all, one of the also like greenwashing red flag that you can see when those brands are talking about sustainability is they emphasis on the material. You know, it's all about like, oh, okay, yeah, we're using like Tencel, we're using like this or that material that is actually better, and there's not much transparency on the production line and the manufacturing, like who's manufacturing your clothes. So it was very, very interesting to see this resurgence of brands, mainly like H&M, coming back to the forefront, which is not also a coincidence, to be honest, because with this whole sustainability crave, which, by the way, the whole kind of thing was very interesting. The way it was actually dealt with was bad, but the subject that was arose from those were actually interesting. It's just that because the moment that those brands realized that people were actually caring a bit more about the environment, and then the thing is, those brands' entire motto is against the environment because they're capitalistic first and foremost. They had to try to find some compromises in order to appease the mind of the consumer, because they need the consumer to keep consuming. That's how basically the whole thing works, is that if nobody's consuming, those brands are not making profit. Those compromises were those, you know, kind of breadcrumbs that they would give you to give you this feeling that, oh, you're really actually doing something, when in hindsight you're not really doing much, because they're just on the surface, they feel like that they're actually doing something, but the moment that you start kind of scratching the surface, you're starting to realize that actually the behind the scenes are still very ugly, still super, super ugly. So again, the H&M thing also came with the H&M Studio side, with is another way to try to greenwash the whole thing, because in people's mind, they do believe that luxury is actually more ethical and more sustainable than fast fashion, which is not true. H&M Studio came up with this more luxurious brand in order to keep going with the greenwashing grifting, because in people's mind, having this idea that it's a more luxurious brand, and you know, if you ask people like luxury because of the price tag of luxury items, a lot of people do believe that it's actually fairer, it's like working conditions are better, and because we also being lied to about the fact that those items are being made in the West, so that's why they're actually the best, where most of the time it's not true, but it's also a very racist way, very racist and imperialistic way to view like work, because it keeps, you know, pushing the fact that the West is better, so every work that is made here is better, and the one that is made in like the global majority is not. So it's very problematic. So it was actually so, I don't know, so cheesy to see some influencers trying to justify why they were now collaborating with H&M, because H&M Studio is actually better, it's better quality, and it was never like about how the working conditions were better. It was always like, oh no, it's, you know, the price tag is actually higher, it's more luxurious and all of that. And that's why I've decided to work with them, because they're really making an effort to give good quality clothing. But again, it's always like, yeah, but can we have like maybe more insight about, okay, is the whole production chain changing? Is it more like fair and sustainable then? Or you just being told to talk about the materials and the fabrics that they're using? Because some fabrics are more expensive than others, does not mean that it's sustainable. Anyways, so at first I was witnessing that, and then later on I started seeing people just promoting just the regular H&M, and I remember I was like, wait, are people really promoting H&M? And people were actually promoting like H&M, just regular H&M, like it was completely normal. And so I did like a little research to see that if they, in the annual report, we had like some news on how they've changed and all of that. And no, there's not much news about that, first of all. Second of all, a lot of the promises that they made, they're not reaching them in the years that they're telling us to do, because all those annual reports and all those promises that they're doing, especially when it comes to sustainability, is all talks, because they do know that they're not able to really reach those goals unless they drastically change the production system. And it's not in their interest to do that, because all they care about is making money. And how do you make money? Producing in bulk. So of course, I was like, okay, so why are we seeing more and more influencers promoting H&M? And I think the moment where it kind of got me a little bit PC for me was when I started seeing some hardcore girlies who were all about, you know, secondhand fashion, ethical brands, small brands, and all of that. Some of them starting to promote fast fashion, and I was like, okay, so if now the sustainable girlies are now also starting to promote and literally taking the money of corporation that literally don't care about anything but they profit, we're talking about recession. We literally in deep water. The people are now trying to do everything, and if it means to toss their principles, they'll do it in order to, I don't know, try to stay in a realm of influencing that still allow them to make money. And then it got me thinking a lot about how the whole like fast fashion managed to be seen more highly than it was a few years ago. And I think the answer is really easy as to why this happened. But yeah, it's still kind of baffling to see that we live in a society where the moment people are kind of reassured in some of the I don't know, worries, or some of they just making they feeling a bit better about not choosing the worst option, they still gonna go with the least worst. And it's such a liberal way of thinking, that, you know, I'm gonna take the least worst option. It's still bad, but at least like as long as it's not affecting me directly, it's not a problem to me. For this second chapter, I want to talk about how I believe fast fashion has managed to actually put itself on a new pedestal after like years of vilifying fast fashion. Suddenly people were like, oh, actually it's not that bad. And it's all about because, again, in a liberal world, instead of seeing the whole thing as a global phenomenon and seeing that all things have to be taken together, liberalism will literally tell you that you need to take things one by one, that you can only tackle subjects one by one. When the root of the problem is the same core, you can't just tackle them one by one. You have to tackle them all together at the same time. But liberalism does not want you to know that. I wrote a whole thing. My last Substack article was about how basically liberalism is problematic. I mean, it's about like identity politics, but I do explain how liberalism will want you to just see things one by one, because when you just tackle thing one by one, it's easier to isolate you and to make sure that then you are not uniting with other people who are also like fighting issues that might be similar, but has to be seen as two different things. And in the case of fast fashion, is that ultra fast fashion came around, and all those ultra fast fashion brands such as Shein, Pretty Little Thing, and all those like fast fashion brands that only happen to be online with very, 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 very cheap prices came about. And people starting to kind of do like a comparison between the two, between being like, okay, so I think every day Shein uploads about like between 2,000 to 5,000 new article on their website, which is kind of crazy that it's daily that it happens. And then we also got to know the whole working condition situation and how disastrous it was for the environment. And so what happened is that there was like a focus on that specifically for so long, where people were like, ultra fast fashion bad, to the point that people completely forgot that in that ultra fast fashion, it's just called ultra fast fashion because the turnaround is actually quicker, than the fast fashion, but it's still fast fashion because quality is still shit, working condition still shit. I mean, it's still like a massive problem because it's still there to feed in capitalism. But because we were told that, okay, now it's time to tackle ultra fast fashion, which also, when you think of it, we were actually pushed to just focus on that ultra fast fashion thing. But when it came to our government and our laws and regulations, they weren't really doing much about that, to be honest. Like, people had to push for petitions to actually force our government to really do something about that issue, which shows you about how liberalism literally does not care, because if they really did care, they would do something about it. They would literally, from the moment they think that it's becoming a major problem, they would change the whole like regulations. At least laws comes after, but regulations on how to deal with those situations. But because they did not, they were not doing anything about that. So they liked the fact that we were in a way distracted in talking about that. But this just shows you how a liberal society just does not care, because like I keep repeating, liberalism is conservatism but with a nicer face. Liberalism, conservatism are both sides of fascism. It's just that one is straightforward and in your face, and the other one pretends to be on your side until you're threatening its interest, and then it's gonna start to, show like who they really are. But liberalism and conservatism are the exact same thing. And I think, and I hope mostly that more and more people are realizing that, because yeah, it's becoming so obvious with the Western empire decaying that liberalism has actually enabled fascism to come into power. There's like two political branches that are working for the same system, that are working for the same people, that are loyal to the same oligarchy, So it's important to understand why when all our eyes were focused on ultra fast fashion, nothing happened, because they had no business to really do something in order to make it better, in order to really change the whole thing. Because as long as it's benefiting the system, what would liberalism do something about it? If it's literally doing what it's intended, and liberalism is also there to protect those kind of system and those kind of companies to thrive the way they are, why would they do anything about it? It's just that liberalism is going to give you this impression that they really trying to do something, but they're not going to do anything. And we are seeing it right now with literally the whole genocide happening in Palestine, in Congo, and all those environmental catastrophes happening. I mean, it's just, you're seeing how the fact that nothing has stopped. And we were told about how Western countries stood for justice, no matter what. It can be like environmental justice, like human justice, all those type of justices that we were supposed to be the beacon of. Turns out that we're not. And we've never been. I mean, when you live in a system, when you live in an area of the world where it's built itself on the exploitation on others, it's built itself on genocide, it's built itself on deaths, of course, the whole course of its existence is gonna be the same thing. Because if they've seen that it's working and they managed to put themselves on such a pedestal, why would they change the course of history? They always give us this idea that we need to look back to learn from the past, but they never do. They never do learn from the past, because it's not beneficial for a system that benefits from the atrocities that happened in the past and benefit from those atrocities to be maintained today. And I believe that because our eyes were all on those ultra fast fashion and realizing how bad they were, and how awful they were, and also like the fact that they were also dividing people, because the whole thing about the whole ultra fast fashion thing was also a whole class thing, class divide that was happening, where people, instead of accusing the system that is propping up this type of companies to exist and production to exist, they were being like, oh yeah, it's poor people literally being the problem because they keep buying Shein, they keep buying. Guys, Guys, but liberalism love that. It loves that because the moment that you're not focusing on the actual issue, which is the system and them being the problem and not doing anything, they will keep you, you know, in fighting, because they're like, so you're not taking care, you're not paying attention to the fact that we are actually the one causing those issues. Keep doing what you're doing. And so we're vilifying ultra fast fashion to a point where nobody was really caring much about fast fashion, let's say the high street fast fashion brand. And as the society was decaying anyways, because capitalism is not a sustainable system, so of course capitalism at some point, since all those corporations are all about greed and they just want to make as much money, and so trying to like sway every laws and regulations and like pendulum swing on their way, like people were actually losing the battle. Like when I say people, it's like the everyday people like you and me. We're losing the battle on the field because economically we were getting weaker and weaker. A lot of people have actually slipped under either poverty or struggling financially, because the gap between the ultra rich and the regular poor people is so wide, and hasn't been this wide in years, that people are feeling it. Like that, there's a reason why we're talking about recession. There's a reason why people, like, we're seeing a lot of things happening because people cannot afford things. We live in a society where we know that my generation, so millennials and Gen Z, we might not afford to buy properties. It's so, we are this generation when we just know that economically speaking, I think what happened is just that the high street fast fashion brand came back kind of, on tippy toes, being like, oh, by the way, we know that you're struggling financially, but we still know that you want to feel part of the society and take part in those new trends that gives you this feeling of being luxurious, like the quiet luxury shtick that was going on, which is kind of an insane thing when you think of it, because quiet luxury is literally people faking this idea of being wealthy when they not, when they're literally not. But it's just that I think we are in such deep waters with a decaying society. It's not fun to live through a decaying society, but we are such in deep waters that people need to pretend to be, financially stable or financially wealthy, um, in order to feel something. And where you also see like the link between fashion and class as well, and how fashion is a political thing, because people are trying to show them from their appearance, from the way they dress, that they part of a certain class, and even if it means faking it. To be honest with you, I literally, at this point in time, I literally don't care if you consume fast fashion, ultra fast fashion. Do whatever you do. We are living in a hellhole, and like, as long as we are not uniting and trying to organize to really take down the system, who am I to tell you what to do? I'm just trying to get you to be more critical on that, and more thoughtful of your consumption. But I'm not going to tell you what you're doing, what you need to do, because my beef is with the system and the people propping up the system. That's who I have beef with. the people being victim of the system is not the people I have beef with. The people not being given much alternative to the system is not who I have beef with. So I'm just, for the people who might be like interested to know what are my views on that at this point in time, I just don't, you know, my problem is with the people who are actually so heartless that they would literally sell the entire citizens out in order to make a buck and to just make sure that they keep being buddies and buddies with mega corps who don't pay any taxes and who necessitates mass misery of the people in order to hoard as much money. That's the people I have beef with. So just so you know. Also, like, those brands then approaching influencers, because a lot of those influencers who were actually also promoting those fast fashion brand again, a lot of them, I've seen like a lot of small influencers and just a few big influencers as well. And the fact that this fast fashion brand came back into the limelight as nothing really happened is so interesting. And it kind of got me thinking about the influencers themselves, kind of what is pushing them to keep collaborating with corporations, with brands that do not give a flack about anything but their own profit. So chapter 3 is going to be about my 2 cents on those influencers accepting to work with fast fashion brands and to promote them, and particularly the ones who used to be like, I'm not consuming fast fashion, I'd rather consume secondhand, which also the whole secondhand thing is a problem. I have a video on that you can watch just right there after this video, of course, on why the whole secondhand world was also not a solution, but it was basically another way for this liberal world to keep the system working as they need it to work. So the whole thing with those influencers is that I think it's important to understand who are influencers. Like, influencers are those micro celebrities. Some of them even kind of switch from like the status of an influencer to the status of a celebrity. Like, you have people like Emma Chamberlain who went from a kind of, I think like her status is a bit kind of blurry, but there's, when I think about those kind of influencers that went from just being like regular influencers to celebrities, I do like Emma Chamberlain is someone who comes up like a lot, because actually it's someone that is usually, you know, because of her status out there, because she's a famous influencer. And what is also interesting between influencers and celebrities is that, like, I remember watching like a video essay. If I find it, I will actually post it, about someone who was talking about how, I don't remember if it was it Jordan Theresa? Where they were talking about how in Coachella this year, you could clearly see who were the influencers and who were the celebrities, because the celebrities went in very casual like fits to the festival. Like, one example was Kylie Jenner. Kylie Jenner did not do any fuss on her outfit, very simple, very casual, whereas the influencers were all decked down in incredible outfits, usually because a lot of those influencers were sent by brands, so they needed to also promote the brands they were going with. But you could clearly see that there was like who were the influencers and who were the celebrities. And what's actually very interesting is that in that video, and I believe it was like Jordan Teresa, if it's not, I'm sorry, but I think it was Jordan Teresa who was saying that the reason why there's actually now this divide is that because the line between influencing and celebrating has blurred so much that the celebrities need to find a way in order to still show the people that they are different from the influencers, that they still need to be this hierarchy, that they are in that those are celebrities are here and influencers are just below. And it's something that we see happening a lot with celebrities, where they'll make something very famous, very popular, and then the moment that the masses get to have access to it, they need to move into something new, you know, or not necessarily something new, but something else that is actually distinguishing them to the masses. And usually because influencers, like, there's very few influencers that have this kind of blurry status between influencing and celebrities, but majority of other influencers are just like micro celebrities. They're still like very tiny. And I think in my bubble, the ones that I gravitate towards are also small influencers usually, because they're more like in the fashion realm. And so, and mostly like the sustainable fashion realm. So because they're very tiny, those are still like also the masses. And the thing is, in a capitalistic society where you are being told that the only way for you to be important and to have like influence is by reaching the higher ups, the whole goal of influencers for a lot of them is to actually be able to climb the ladders. And I'm not, you know, I'm again talking very generally about the whole thing and about my observation, but it's just that you can clearly see that some influencers just want to have access to areas, to location, to places where other celebrities also do have access. Because even though the tides are changing and all the views around like celebrities are also turning, we still live in a society that still values the idea of being like super famous, you know, super famous, having so much wealth at your disposal and so much influence where all eyes are on you at all times. Because being a celebrity, being a star, guarantees you financial stability. Of course, in a society where we all thriving for that stability, when you know that you can like get there in an easier way, because if you're already influencing, you're going to try to side with that realm, you know. And if you've paid attention, you do know that the realm of celebrity is not a good realm. It's not a realm you want to actually really be around if you're someone who really cares about other people and not just yourself. Because even though you don't only care about yourself, I feel like that at some point you're going to be forced to be caring about yourself, because the whole world of celebrity is intertwined with capitalism. And at the end of the day, you are usually signed to an agency. You are usually representing or collabing with other brands, and you have to make them money. So, and if you don't make them money, you're gonna be dropped. So there's this pressure of constantly having like a certain relevance in your career, because you need to lure in consumers for that company, and whatever company that is, that can be like an agency or whatever, to make money. Like the only value that they see in you is if you do make money. But because when an empire is crumbling and collapsing, usually people tend to like grip to it, because that's the only thing they know. And in a time where financial instability is a thing for a lot of people, where majority of the people are living paycheck to paycheck. Some people, I don't know, like when you look at the United States, there's a record high of homelessness because a lot of people cannot afford the rent there. I know so many people around me who are also struggling to find jobs as well. So financial instability is actually a thing. And I don't, I'm not surprised with the fact that when there's financial instability, I'm going to try any means necessary to save your own ass, even if it means to completely toss all your principles and just do it for the money. And I just I respect the ones who openly say it, where they're just like, you know what, guys, I need the money, and that's why I did it. I literally respect more people like that than people who are trying to find excuses as to why they did that, because at the end of the day, we all know that you also did that because of the money, especially when it comes from a fast fashion brand. And then there's still like so many coming out of how unethical and unsustainable those brands are. Just a reminder that the immigrant is not the one who's actually making your life hell. The corporations are, because a lot of corporations in countries don't pay taxes, and it means that it's millions, billions even, of taxes that are not being paid and that can't be funded in healthcare, education, or culture, or transportation, or other important field that is actually helping the people. So corporations are very selfish. They just don't care. If they could actually literally completely wreck the whole world havoc, they would. If it was in their interest, they really would. So I don't think there's a way to really justify working with those brands, but I just respect people more if they're being honest. Like I said, I'm not gonna really blame the influencers themselves, because themselves are also trapped in a system, and they're also like living the decaying world, like a lot of us. Like majority of us are still very regular people. They are not like super wealthy people. And even in the celebrity dom, a lot of celebrities actually are not as wealthy as people think they are. It's an assumption that because the ones that are pushed a lot are super wealthy, but it takes a lot of time for them to be like super wealthy anyways, because again, it's always all about luck. Like you need to be lucky in order to really make it in this world, and to then believe that you completely spared from any collapse or any decaying society because you believe that your money is going to save you, which you can have all the money in the world, the environment or the empire just does not really care. From my observation and the reason why I think we're seeing more and more of those influencers promoting those fast fashion brands, it's because they do they're part of a realm where they're trying to reach the celebrity dom status to guarantee themselves stability that we all trying to chase, especially in time of uncertainty, where we just like we just don't know how we are surviving the whole collapse of an empire. And especially when you see like what the empire is actually allowing to happen elsewhere, because the boomerang effect is real. So, and we're already seeing this happening there right now, where things that is happening, for example, at the moment in Palestine, is coming back in the West, because let's not forget that everything that the genocidal army is testing on the Palestinian is then being sold in the rest of the world. And I think his name is Anthony Lowenstein. I mean, I always say like Lowenstein because German, but he's an Australian Jewish author, and he wrote the Palestine Laboratory, and where he's actually explaining how there's all the weapons that developed, and the spy is, I think it's more like the spying system, like Pegasus and all of that, tried on the Palestinians and then sold in the rest of the world. And this is a part of the boomerang effect, because also in a society where people just don't pay much attention to politics and don't really understand much about the difference with liberalism, there's still so many people who believe that liberalism is leftism. It's not. Liberalism is literally, I hate this word center right, but it is center right. I don't know, I think it's sad to do that, but when it's the only thing that you know, and you're not really interested in politics much, and you're not really digging a little bit more into understanding what those brands really entails and where they're investing and all of that, and how they're making their money and how this money is paying you. I don't know. Sometimes I just wish people were more into politics and understanding things, because politics is literally like everyday life. People who always go about like the fact that you should not talk about politics all the time. Well, no, it's not that I should not talk about politics all the time. It's just that politics is literally there all the damn time. I have no choice but just having to be surrounded by it, because everything that we do in this world is regulated by politics. What's to say? What's to say is that, yes, my observation as to why the fast fashion is coming back into the limelight is always linked to political atmospheres, because everything is linked to politics, guys. Like, everything is linked to politics. So that's why we are seeing a resurgence of those massive brands who are actually corporations making a comeback, because we are, like I said at the very beginning, heightened phase of capitalism. And Vladimir Lenin did say and did write about the fact that the heightened phase of capitalism is fascism. And when we come to that very last phase, all the massive corporations just know that they don't have much left. And I'm saying corporation, but also oligarchs and very wealthy people just know that they don't have much left with the system. So even though they're trying everything to maintain it, that's why fascism is there, because fascism is the last resort in trying to maintain a system that is fizzling out, because a system that is not sustainable and ethical to begin with and not made for the majority is not a system that is deemed to last forever. And it already lasts way too long, like 500 years. We've had enough. It's time to change systems and to have one that is really rooting for the people. Okay, people, so that is it for this video. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to also check all the references that I always put below as well. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. That helps me a lot. Share it around. The more the merrier. And I'll see you in my next one. Love always.